purposely put myself in physical, mental, and emotional stress and trauma to work out how I keep going in a calm and focused way to get the job done no matter what. Now, all of my events I don't do races. I don't want to be the first. I don't want trophies. I don't want anything like that. All my events are for a completely different purpose. And to be able to push myself that far really shows me and other people who live vicariously through my challenges of what's possible in life. That's what it's all about now.
That's Damien Rider. He's a multiple world record holding adventure and extreme sports athlete and a world-renowned wellness and mindset coach.
Testing and challenging yourself, because every time you do test and challenge yourself and process it, we become stronger and become prouder of who we are and we get excited of who we are and what we can actually do.
This man recently skydived off the top of a hot air balloon at 7,500 feet. He's pushed a 3-ton truck down the Gold Coast Highway, skateboarded for 56 days through the Mojave Desert and completed an entire marathon carrying a mattress on his shoulder. And that's not all.
People seem to get what they want out of my events and watching them vicariously, whether it's them doing their own challenges or them taking excuses out of their lives for just getting started again, and the main reason is just giving them hope.
Damien pulls off these mind-blowing feats to prove nothing is impossible, and he does it all in the name of raising awareness for survivors of complex trauma like himself. Damien suffered horrific child abuse throughout his young life and grew up without the tools to make sense of what happened to him.
Emotional, physical, sexual, all of the above.
He abused drugs to try to escape and ultimately made multiple attempts on his life before beginning his extraordinary turnaround.
It's not like I block it out at all. It's still there. It's just non-existent in my life. I'm a different person. I'm proud of who I am.
He's been crowned Men's Health Man of the Year and is a 2-time Australian of the Year nominee. You'd be hard-pressed to find a story more worth hearing than this one. Welcome to Young Blood, an award-winning podcast on a mission to make the mental health of young men a top priority. My name's Callum McPherson, I'm a journalist, and this is our platform to open up and share stories of what we've been through because we're not alone. Let's do it. Before we kick this off, I just want to say thanks so much to everyone who's taken 15 to 90 seconds out of their day to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. It boosts us up the ranks massively and makes a huge difference to how many people we can reach with these potentially life-saving stories. So thank you. And for those who haven't got around to it, please, if Young Blood has delivered you some value, let us know on there. Cheers, legends. This episode is sponsored by Bolton Brothers, the guys dedicated to changing the face of men's mental health, and Ski for Life, the organisation promoting mental health and suicide prevention through their annual ski relay in South Australia. Check out their websites and follow them on socials. Trigger warning, if you find anything spoken about in today's episode distressing, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14. Damien, how did the abuse that you suffered as a child begin?
Well, look, without really even understanding it at the time, it kind of began when I was like 2 years old from my grandmother, who was just this crazy alcoholic, and, she abused my mum and her siblings and kind of just carried on. I'd get left at her house and she'd get drunk and throw me around, or the fireplace that was in her house, she'd put chestnuts in there and they'd sort of pop out and I'd have to catch them, they'd burn me. But I didn't really know what was going on at the time. But at the same time, I knew I had to escape. And because of it, I guess I became an athlete, because just down the road from the house was this running track and they'd always have meets there. And, I would go down there and run next to them. Like when I was a kid, from the age of like 2 to 4, I remember sneaking through the gates and running next to them on the tracks as they're running down. I just didn't realise really until I did my film Harder to See, how much of an impact that made on my life going forward, as that was, my tool, my survival tool, to be active and start pushing myself, I guess. So, and then after then we moved to Adelaide, and then my mum's boyfriend turned up in the house, and it was just, crazy. I was about 6 years old and out front of the house, and he's just beating up all these police on the front lawn, and that was kind of my introduction to this guy. And, there's constantly like blood all over the house. My mum was beaten up, we were beaten up, or thrown against walls, like there's holes everywhere. Like, it's just crazy. Like, just to think back of how it was, and of what became normal in my life, just getting programmed in such a wrong and negative way, like just, thinking every day could be my last day, just turning to activities like skating, you know, that's why I've got my boards up on the wall. Like, you know, I just skate from sun up to sundown and just keep pushing the limits as much as I could. You know, there was nights I'd have to sleep in rock caves on the beach and everything. So I guess that started off my attraction and my connection to the ocean as well. You know, it's like a survival tool, I guess. But again, not really understanding any of that. And, you know, it wasn't really in mainstream about how you heal or anything back in those days. You couldn't talk to anyone. You know, there's not like the gurus that get around now that sort of give you a little bit of insight. So, you know, it was really just about working everything out myself and had no role models or mentors really. Just, you know, as I got older, it was like, you know, these dudes like the Bones Brigade, and I'd watch their vids and I'd try and copy what they were doing, and kind of that was it, you know. And I just always knew I had more in myself, but it was just about really exploring it and seeing who I was. And, you know, I did all different disciplines of sports, like baseball and cricket and soccer and pretty much everything, and always excelled at whatever I did. So I knew I was always going to be a natural athlete, but just didn't really know, didn't have anyone to guide me in the right direction then, you know. But as I said, you know, it's like, you know, 30 years later and, you know, I'm a professional athlete now. You know, I travel the world and I do what, you know, I probably should have been doing for the last 30 years. But, you know, I guess I'm my own mentor and I'm my own role model to be able to do whatever I wanted to do. Things might take a little bit of time that you want to do, but you just, you know, I never give up on them. You know, I just kind of let them happen. And now, because of things like that have happened recently in my life, now it's just like, what else can I do? You know, just keep pushing. And what did I think about when I was a kid? And all right, let's go and do it.
Yeah, you certainly turned your dreams into reality. From the time you were conscious, pretty much, it sounds like there was always violence in your life. Never had that nurturing influence or a chance to rest. Do you remember how you used to feel within your younger self just going about your day-to-day life?
Super confusing, you know, like I had a lot of aggression within me. And it's only because that's, you know, that was predominant in my life, like in my home life, which is kind of meant to be, you know, your sanctuary and where you're meant to feel safe to go home. And to not have that, you know, to always be on edge and to not know how to deal with situations that pop up, like if someone at school was having a go at me or whatever it was, you know, it was kind of like bring up the fist and start slugging away, you know. Yeah, just not really understanding what was going on, knowing that what was happening in my house wasn't normal because I couldn't hear any of the other kids talking about that. No one else was really turned up with bruises and cuts and blood all over their face or anything to school either.
Yeah, so you knew it wasn't normal, but at the same time it had been happening for such a long time that it must have been somewhat normalised to you.
Exactly, yeah, just normalised, but, you know, not knowing how to escape it as well, you know. So I just tried to turn my energy to somewhere else. Like I was always with a smile, and, you know, it was always, you know, hundreds of kids would come to my house and like we'd go ride or skate or build ramps or whatever it was, you know. Like I was always around a lot of people, and I guess I was pretty influential back in those days then. Like my brother used to say, you're either going to be like, you know, some sort of motivational speaker or a car salesman or an actor or something like that, you know, because, you know, I just kept enjoying life, you know, but not really knowing. But I think as well, it was really more forced upon. So, you know, there was a lot of joy that was going on the outside that people were seeing, but not really on the inside. So
yeah,
it was just, just trying to work that out, which took a long time.
Because no one knew what you were going through. So although you had that mask on and a lot of people in your life, you must have felt like you couldn't really connect with any of them on a level like what you needed, because no one was going to understand what was going on at home. What was your relationship like with your mum?
I mean, she was a good provider, you know, as much as she could. She, you know, because she went through child abuse as well from, as I said, like her mother, my grandmother, you know, she was emotionally detached from everything, like so emotionally immature to even try and talk to about any of this. You kind of dismiss it, or you should just get angry about it, or just be saying, what can I do? And, we'd sort of, my brother and sister and I would say, look, just leave the dude, just go,
Which is the typical response, isn't it?
Yeah, she's just too scared, She didn't know what to do. Like, as I said, it wasn't as knowledgeable as it is now, and definitely of the long-term effects of it all. And, she grew up in the country where you just kind of don't speak about that. You don't talk about what's going on in your own household. So things were tough, and my mum, she wasn't like a career person at all. Like she worked from the age of 14, pretty much left school. And, so there was tough times for us growing up as kids. Like, we'd have to go out and collect cans and bottles and stuff like that just to get any sort of money to pay rent or for us to eat or anything like that. So, or I'd be, at the tip pulling apart bike parts and making a bike and trying to sell them, or catching frogs down the local creek and selling frogs to pet shops, or doing whatever I could.
So you had to be pretty entrepreneurial.
I had to be, yeah. I just, I kind of had to be at that stage. And I just, I just knew there was more to me, and there was more worth. So I just, once I started exploring, I just, got excited about that. Not excited about making money as such, but excited about the thrill of the chase to be able to make the money. I guess.
And I guess freedom as well, because you would have felt like you were trapped for so long and couldn't get away from this dark cloud hanging over your life, and must have wanted nothing more than to break free from that. When you talk about the abuse, it was really the physical violence and then emotional abuse.
Yeah, I mean, emotional, physical, sexual, all of the above. Yeah, it's just, like it's a crazy time looking back. I'm thankful for my struggles for what I'm able to achieve now, because even my paddle down to Bondi, before I went in the water, I was like, well, if that didn't break me as a kid and I'm still here, all I'm doing is paddling in the ocean for 17 days.
So even the absolutely outrageous feats that you've achieved since then must have seemed in some ways easy compared to surviving the abuse and surviving what you went through as a child, which is just crazy to think about. So after, was it sort of 6-7 years living with your mum's boyfriend and living under that abuse, and then you ended up moving to the Gold Coast?
So he was around from, I guess, the age of 6 and 7, and then he went away, jail or something like that, for a little while. And then he came back when I was about 12, and then we kind of floated around a little bit. And then, when I was 17, I just, moved out of home and packed my car and just moved to the Gold Coast. And I guess my life started again there, That's how I see it.
And when you got there, did you pretty much launch into the drugs straight away and the party scene, trying to escape from whatever the hell was going on inside you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd always been into that, as an escape, like, from the age of 13, 14, drinking and taking a lot of acid and pretty much everything, experimenting with everything, back in the day. And then same thing, back up on the Gold Coast and, spending a lot more time in the water, like surfing, 7 and 9 hours every day, 2 or 3 sessions just constantly, and pushing myself more. But yeah, of course, the whole, drug and alcohol, abuse was still there. And, it was kind of like back in those days as well, 25 odd years ago, it was kind of like that was the surf culture as well. It's not like how it is now. So again, not the only role models were like other people who were drinking more or smoking more weed or something like that,
Yeah.
But still surfers and still on the tour and everything. So you're kind of looking, going, well, they're doing it, so maybe it's not too bad. But again, just trying to work it out, for a long time and just using that as a tool and just going up and down all the time. But again, just didn't have that strong role model.
Did you know that you were dealing with really intense trauma were you aware of that, or what was your sort of understanding of what had happened to you and where it had led you?
I didn't, nah, by this time, like, I didn't really understand it. I knew there was a lot of aggression inside of me and I knew why. But to try and alleviate it, deal with it, tools around it, you know, as I said, it just wasn't there. You know, like, I've been to a lot of therapists, but they didn't really give me anything that worked at all. You know, most of them haven't gone through it themselves to really know what tools to give you. They just tell you to eat properly or do this and that, like the basic textbook things. And you're like, I'm doing that, but
that's not going to cut
it. You know, like, this isn't working. Whatever you're telling me is not working.
Yeah. Okay. And did you have any experience with dissociating? Like, when that abuse was happening to yourself, did you see yourself as separate to the person who was going through it? Or because I know we hear often about people who've gone through complex trauma or been traumatized in some way, that they need to separate themselves from the actual abuse that's happening at the time to try and deal with it, or go into denial. Did you experience anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the biggest lesson in the whole thing is acceptance. You know, it's about accepting what happened, having some sort of understanding around it that, you know, it wasn't your fault, and then accepting that you can't change it. You know, all you can do is just try and look at some sort of positives out of it to be able to use it to keep on going forward, you know, and then the long road starts.
So, being a victim of abuse, did you blame yourself for it for a long time?
Yeah, of course. But I blame myself for a different reason, because it wasn't until I was 22 that my mum sent me a letter saying, your dad's not this guy, which is the same as my brother and sister, it's some other guy. So I'd always grown up with, you know, people telling me, this is all your fault because you were born. If you weren't born, none of this would happen to our family. You know, so then at 22, I'm like, shit, well, it is my fault because I was born. Even though, like...
So you thought your dad, you thought your dad had left because of you?
Yeah, who wasn't even my dad anyway. It was my brother and sister's dad. Right. So my mum and my real dad, you know, both had families. You know, they cheated on their families, and then out I popped, you know, but no one told me until I was 22.
But people blamed you for that.
People blame me for that.
Oh, right.
And then I blame myself for it. Once I found out, I'm like, well, shit, it is my fault because I was born, you know? And then it was like, you know, again, like trying to accept after that to go, hang, I'm not the one who cheated here. Yeah. That's their doings. That's not even for me to deal with. That's, you know, if other people got an issue, that's their issue. You know, that's not my problem at all.
And did you ever think that it was partly your fault that you were getting abused by these abusers? Because of course it wasn't, but does part of your mind sort of convince you that part of it's down to you that's happening?
Yeah, like at the time I remember thinking, what am I doing to deserve this? And obviously that would ring in your head and you would sort of, you know, tiptoe around or try and work out what was going on beforehand to be put in that position. And again, you know, it just goes back to that accepting that, you know, he was, and my grandma, they're just alcoholic, crazy people, you know, and they're just.
But when you're a kid, you're so far away from being able to understand all that, and you're in this position of growing in your life, and your brain's totally malleable, and you're very vulnerable in a lot of ways. So you can't just work that all out for yourself.
Yeah, it shouldn't happen to anyone at all, no matter what age they are. It was hard to deal with, you know, and I just didn't know how to at all. And as I said, you know, there wasn't the tools, it wasn't the people, it wasn't spoken about. It was, you know, it's not like it is now. Like even still now, there's a hell of a long way to go. But, you know, at least there's some sort of dialogue around.
Did you feel like you could tell anyone about it at the time? Did you tell any friends, even when you were messed up on drugs or alcohol? Did you ever talk about it, or did you really feel like you had to keep all of it inside yourself?
Yeah, for the most part, I just kept it all in. definitely I just kept it in. I think I told a couple of kids while I was sitting on top of the skate ramp, but, I guess I just didn't get the reaction that I thought I was going to get, I guess, and that was kind of it. It was kind of, all the neighbours knew, and I was friends with all the neighbours, and they knew, and they just did nothing about it as well. So I'm like, well, shit, who am I going to tell? And even the police at the time, the police knew. Police weren't doing anything, like nothing at all. So I'm like, well, who do I go to?
Yeah, so you feel totally hopeless then, because it's like, well, if people know about it, other adults and even the police, and they still can't do anything, or like, who do you go to after the police? So yeah, I just must have felt so hopeless being in that situation.
Yeah, definitely. And just, lost respect for authority and for laws, really. Like they're meant to be there to protect you. And also like teachers at school, because I'd turn up at school and I'd have bruises all over me, and then I'd get put on detention because they thought I was fighting on the way to school. It was just like, I can't win here. Sleeping on the beach in rocks all night. Now I come to school to try and do the right thing, and I get put on detention for it.
Yeah, so you just feel like the whole world's against you, and so many other young people would be able to relate to a story like that, where the social circle they're mixing in, or whether it's school or whatever club they're involved in, thinks, oh, this kid's a bad kid or a bad egg or whatever, but actually they're having all this terrible stuff happen to them, and they're just trying to cope and deal with it in some way, and you're pigeonholed and seen in a certain light, and then people actually make it harder for you, perhaps because they don't understand what's going on, or they don't make a read on you. And then it'd be easy for a kid in that situation to feel like, oh, well, clearly there's something wrong with me, or I'm supposed to be the enemy, or I'm supposed to be the bad guy, and then lean into playing that role, because it's like, well, if society says this is who I am, then at least I'll do a good job of being the bad guy then.
Yeah, definitely. And I was just lucky, I guess, to, as I said, had another outlet of sports to always draw me to, and just being inquisitive and wanting to travel and everything, just seeing more of what's out there and what's available. But yeah, I mean, it's a huge problem. It's, you probably know, it's like probably in the 90% of people who are incarcerated probably went through the same stuff as I went through. And like you said, they just, ended up, they made that one bad choice along the way that's sent them that way, and now they're stuck on that cycle. And like I said, the groups, the gangs, or whoever it might be, is drawn them in, and they look for someone, and it just turns out to be a bad someone for them, I guess.
Yeah, and so many people, it's people who are going through trauma, generational trauma, looking for community, looking for some sort of escape, someone who's going to look after them, and then that leads them down the wrong road. But we're all looking for the same things as humans, which is to be safe and to be nurtured and to find somewhere to belong. And if we can't get that through the normal avenues, then we'll seek it elsewhere, and then that can lead to trouble. But it's not really the fault of the person who ends up suffering as a consequence of it. And so you ended up making some attempts on your life in your early 20s after all of this stuff added up. Can you just talk about that briefly, and getting to that point in your life before obviously you turned it all around in an absolutely prolific way?
Yeah, I mean, I made a few attempts, like I say 4, but there's probably like 5 or 6, but 4, pretty good goes at it. But it just becomes normalised, like there's not enough that's spoken out about, what suicide is and how people come about with it, and what depression is as well. And, we're so stuck on people who are depressed. They're the ones that are quiet, sitting in the corner, not talking to anyone, not doing anything, sitting inside, not going out, antisocial, blah, blah, blah. But it's so wrong, because I don't know why it doesn't change, because when you have a look at people who commit suicide, it's always, oh my God, they're life of the party. They're, the school captain.
Yeah, the person that you least expect.
They're like, it's the active depressive ones that end up going through with it. And that's how I was, I was always active, I was always achieving, but there was just so much going on the inside of me as well. But it's also, the so-called professionals that I was going to kept saying to me, you got to learn to live with this for the rest of your life, and all you can do is learn to manage it. And it's just like you get to a point where you think, I don't want to learn to manage this anymore, because whatever you're telling me is not working, and I'm hurting myself and I'm hurting everyone else around me. I'm sick of being on this cycle all the time of spiraling out of control and having highs and major lows, and then living a life that I just don't want to keep living. So you come up with that decision to check out, but it's not like it's a spare of the moment thing. Like, it becomes normalized. There's thought process into it of why that's the only option for you now. And it's not just for yourself, and it's people who actually go through it. It's not a selfish reason. One's stop hurting yourself, but the other is stop hurting everyone else that's around you, So then once you go through one attempt, then, the can of worms open then. You've already made an attempt, so it becomes normalised again. Then you make another one, and then it becomes even more normalised again, and you can justify why this is like, a normal option.
When you were making these attempts, after you survived them, were there people there for you who were trying to talk some sense into you or listen to you or be there for you, or was it very much you were alone each time and then you were alone afterwards again?
Yeah, it's just alone each time, and I try to speak to a couple of people, and they're just like, there's that old stereotypical thing, you're just doing it to get attention or this or that. If you're going to do it, just do it properly. Like, fuck. I thought I was doing it properly,
Jesus.
Like, so you think, I can't even do that right. Like, what am I doing? I can't even live life properly, and I can't even end life properly. Like, what's going on here? So, yeah, just very alone, and just want to process it and go through it. And then, on the last one, I was probably, I don't know, maybe 5-10 seconds away from it being totally over, and I got found just in time and sort of revived a little bit and come together. But that was a big shift in my life. That one was.
What changed after that one?
Well, it was strange. Like, as soon as I sort of come to, there was like a voice was in my head that said to me, what happens if you go to another place and you're still dealing with this shit and you can't get rid of it? How about you have one last go to do it yourself to change this, So that's what I did, and all I thought about was where was some place that I'd felt the most healthy, happy, like naturally happy, free, and that was back in the ocean, back in the warm water, surfing again, just around people, like-minded people in the water, and so that's what I did. So I went come back to the Gold Coast and started surfing again, and just immersed myself in the water as I could, and just try to understand, like, why is this such an amazing healing element and aspect of my life, and a lot of other people as well.
And why? Why is it? What is it about the water and surfing and nature and being out there that is so healing for someone with trauma?
Well, I mean, I believe it's because there's so much movement that's going on in the water. And you're watching whitecaps and you're watching waves, and there's so much movement that's going on out there that you're reprogramming what's going on in your head, but also you can't think about what's going on the land, while all that information's coming in as well. And then when you catch a wave, you can't think about anything else. All you think about is that wave and what you're going to do on it and getting through it, So what it does, it just simplifies life, it just really narrows it down to in the moment to what you're doing, and you're not overthinking everything that's going on land, because your mind's getting occupied and stimulated by natural elements. And as I said, it just simplifies things down to just being in the moment to do it, because you can't think of anything else. I can't think about what happened to me as a kid when I'm, surfing a wave, 5-foot wave or something, and the lips coming over and it's like shallow underneath, and you're just trying to survive that wave. I don't know what happened to you as a kid. So kind of that's all you're thinking about,
So were you
that's how I feel about it anyway, just that movement. So it's like you're doing EMDR therapy with the eye movement desensitization reprocessing. So with your eyes just darting around, watching what's going on, it's just helping new information come in, and without knowing, the old information's just dispersing and coming out. So there's a flow that's coming in and there's a flow that's coming out at the same time. So to be able to have something just natural and free, to be able to do that, I think is an incredible thing. But you don't have to be in the ocean to do that. You can, now I know what it is and I understand it. If I get any sort of stressful situation or anything, where I can just use everything that's around me, just the movement of the trees, different colours of the trees, the grass, the people moving around. And, I understand, people say, I just love people watching. It works as the same thing. You're sitting out front of the cafe and you're just watching the world go by, and you let everything just desensitize of what's going on and just taking new information from the outside. So it's really about allowing you to look at the bigger picture of everything and look, further than the horizon and wider than the peripheral vision of your life, instead of just living in that tunnel vision of what's ahead and what's just been behind you. It really opens things up to, that 360 view of what your life's actually been and what it actually is in the moment and where it's going as well.
So how did you go from realizing that your happy place was being in the water to saying, all right, I'm going to paddleboard 800 Ks now?
So I just, I knew there was something special in the water, but I knew I needed to really engulf myself in it. So I came into Rainbow Surf Club, asked to borrow a paddleboard, and I paddled straight out. It was about 2 kilometres straight out to sea. And I was like, I didn't think about it. I just paddled. And then sort of stopped and went, holy shit, like I'm a long way out. And I just felt really vulnerable and I hadn't surfed for a long time. So, my body was sore from it. And, with the physical pain, the emotional pain from my past started to come up. And, I was really just started to think of my breath and just calm myself down out there and really enjoy just being in the moment, like feeling vulnerable, but, accepting it and embracing it as well. And, turning the vulnerability to comfortability more like, and just really enjoying it out there and not thinking about, if there were sharks or anything like that or what could happen out there. It was just being grateful in that moment of where I am and what I'm doing. And I thought, all right, I've got to explore this even more so I can explain this to other people, because no one at that time had really spoken about, why or how, being in the ocean or being a surfer is so healing for you. And that's still, it's only just touched on now. People say, oh, you go surf and it's healing for you, but no one really explains what it is, So I just really wanted to find out. So I paddled in and I'm always goal driven. So I thought, all right, I'll go home and see what the world records are of paddleboarding, and I'll learn to paddleboard and I'll train. I'll drop everything aside and I'll do this big paddle. And that's what I did. I sold my car, and if I need to get anywhere, I'd run. And I had to put people at arm's length away from me just to focus on what I knew was right and how I was built and everything that I'd learned along the way, just to do everything intuitively and not listen to really anyone else, how anyone else thinks I should be doing things. It's just, it was a matter of really just taking it into my own hands and doing what I thought was right. And, and January 3rd, 2015, walked down to my local beach, plonked the board in the water, started paddling.
And where did you go from and to?
Paddled from the Gold Coast, so Rainbow Bay, and I paddled down to Bondi, so it was like 808 kilometres in 17 days.
So what was that like in reality? Because you're obviously a man who gets an idea in his head and then says, yeah, I'm going to do that. And other people would say, you're absolutely mental. Definitely don't do that. How did it compare to the actual reality once you got out there? I understand you saw a fair few fins in the water.
Yeah, I mean, I was 2 kilometres into it and I thought, what am I doing?
Yeah.
This is crazy. And there was a storm as well, and like my first leg was from Coolangatta to Byron Bay, which was 68 kilometres, and in my training consecutively I'd only paddled 40 kilometres, so I didn't even know if I was going to make the first leg, because I'd never paddled that distance before.
That's the fun of it.
And Yeah, so I just paddled, and I just had to work it out along the way and just look at like headlands ahead and go, okay, that's where I need to reach, or think of surf spots like Black Rock and go, okay, I've just got to get there. And, I knew I was paddling over shark breeding grounds even on the first day, tiger sharks and stuff. But, I'd get through it and think, well, I got through it, so keep on going.
So you would check in at night and like stay overnight and then go back out? Yeah.
Yeah, so I just mud mapped it where I thought I could get to, and just picked surf clubs along the way and sent the next day's rations to put on my board and called them up. And obviously, surf clubs are right on the beach, so I didn't have to carry my board too far, and I'd just come in just when the sun went down and started to get dark. And most times I made it okay. A couple of times I didn't make it and had to dig a hole and sleep in the sand on the beach and put the board over the top of me because there was nothing else around. And I'll just get up in the morning and start paddling again. But yeah, I mean, it was exciting. The whole way it was exciting, but it was like, there was a lot of emotions, like each of these events that I do, it really compacts what life is. So one day of an event is like a month or 3 months of emotions and personal challenges that most people go through, so it's just condensed down one after another. There was a lot of sharks. There was 21 shark encounters. 2 of them were packs of sharks. Most of them were white pointers over 15 foot, circled, knocked off my board. Then it was like loss of food and water, knocked off my board by waves and stuck underneath the board because it'd curl up underneath me and drag me. I'd be semi-unconscious underwater. And I couldn't really think about what just happened because in 2 minutes or 5 minutes, something else was going to happen, or there was going to be another shark. So I couldn't just pile up all this like emotion on me. I just had to go, shit, okay, all right, keep going because something else is going to come. Just deal with it, you know? So what I did out of intuition to be able to keep going is obviously, the building blocks of life, of how you deal with things, not overthink what's going ahead, accept what's just happened behind, and just have the tools ready for when the next thing comes.
We're just going to take a quick break to hear about a brilliant new podcast called Samson's Stronger that I really encourage you guys to go and check out. Often the hardest stories to tell are the ones that need to be told the most. This is an incredibly informative series focusing on the stories of child sexual abuse survivors and bringing the conversation forward on what's always been a taboo topic. Take a listen.
What does it take?
I always knew something was wrong, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it.
To grow stronger than your past.
Because I knew if I spoke up, something bad would happen.
What does it take for a man to overcome the sexual abuse he endured as a child?
This is where resilience comes in. It was bringing about awareness that the suffering that survivors and victims of child sexual assault endure is nothing that anyone could describe, because only we know.
So for me, the more I talk about it, the less it becomes a secret. And that's the approach that I take, is to suck the energy out of the secret and it just becomes a story.
From Samson, the Survivors and Mates Support Network, this is Stronger, sharing for the first time the courageous recovery stories of male survivors of child sexual abuse and their supporters.
Samson's Stronger podcast, available at samson.org.au/podcast and on your podcast app.
So when you got through that experience, which is absolutely epic, what did that do for you? Did you feel like you had a different relationship with your trauma and your ability to process that by the end of it, or a different sort of self-worth? And obviously you were inspired to want to go and do even more crazy shit after that.
Yeah, look, after day 5 of the paddle, everything completely changed. Day 4, I was stung by a jellyfish. I was feeling sick. I was half paralyzed. I paddled for a long time. I was sore. I was just, with so much emotional, like so much physical pain. There was like all this emotional pain from my past, and voices just going crazy in my head, after 4 days being alone, just seeing blue sky and blue water. And, there was a lot that was sort of going on in my head, and I got into Coffs Harbour, and I just thought, shit, can I go any further? And then sort of just started processing it for the first time of what I'd actually gone through and come through over those days leading up to it. And then I got up in the morning, and it was just like I'd never paddled before. My body felt perfect, and it was an overcast, beautiful day, and I was just going for a normal paddle, nice and fresh. And I put the board in the water, started paddling. I was about 5 minutes into it. A white pointer went past me about 10 metres away, and I just said, "G'day, mate," and just kept on paddling, and things just changed for me that day, So even though it wasn't a suicide mission I was on, I knew there was a high possibility that, I wasn't going to make it alive. But I was, at that time of starting, I was willing to die for what I believed in. But after day 5, the script had changed, and I was just now willing to live for what I believed in, and I was doing it to live and doing it for other people to live, show them another way, So, yeah, it was incredible. And then once I pulled into Bondi, it was like the whole weight of the world just dropped off my shoulders. And I was, for the first time in my life, I was proud of myself, not just for doing the paddle, but for everything that I'd achieved in my life. And, of what I'd left out in the ocean as well. I'll be forever grateful for the paddle, it's, even thinking about it and talking about it, it's so emotional for me, because it was just such a changing moment in my life, 24th of January, when I came in there at 3:00 in the afternoon, it was just something had completely changed in me and in my life and who I was and how I looked at life going forward. But I didn't understand what it was, and I didn't want to come out. And, I got to the beach, and there was a camera crew and everything there and my mates. And, no one really wanted to talk to me too much, because they could see that there was something going on. They just didn't know what, they didn't know how to talk to me about it either. I didn't know how to voice it as well, So, I came back up to the Gold Coast and sat at my little cafe down the road here, Little Marley. And I just sat there for about a month, nearly every day, just watching the world go by and just watching how everything had changed. The whole world had completely changed its face, like on the time that I'd been out in the water to come back. And just, I was really noticing all the negativity that was going on in the world and just what people were complaining about, not being grateful for. And, I just wanted to get back in the water and keep on paddling. But I just thought, I can't just keep paddling in the oceans for the rest of my life. So I was like, right, I need to test this. So that's why I went back to Thailand, and I set myself this 3-day non-stop test that, I don't think anything's impossible, but it was either going to be something absolutely incredible that, I was going to be able to do, or it was going to break me, and either way, I saw that as a win. And what ended up happening was it broke me, so I was 6 kilometres from finishing it, and my body completely shut down, and I couldn't take another step. I tried for 20 minutes, but the good thing about it was, even though I was in so much physical pain that my body just couldn't move, I had no emotional pain from my past at all, nothing negative. So it was really a big win for me. And anyway, so I had a little bit of time out, about 4 hours, and then I ended up going back and finishing it off, because it was a 3-day challenge I set myself, and I was still in day 3. And then afterwards, I knew something special had happened to me in the ocean, and now it was really time to work it out what it was. So then my next challenge was to escape from Chicago to Santa Monica along Route 66. And for me, it was just about skating from point A to point B, knowing I was going to have tests and challenges along the way, and really just be able to dissect what I did intuitively on the paddle to get through these challenges. And then once I work it out, how do I simplify that to be able to voice that to other people?
So with that first paddle, where you clearly had that day or that night or that period where you broke through some sort of massive barrier and you flipped that switch, and it seems like from that point on, you were a different man. On reflection, in the month after that and then going to Thailand, did you work out what that was, or were you able to understand what actually happened in your head, or were you still looking for that answer when you went and did the skateboarding through the Mojave Desert?
I was still looking for those answers, and again, that's why I just gave myself that time. Like I live a pretty busy life when I'm not doing events, anyway, like on the business sort of side of things of everything that I do. And, I always have a lot going on. So, the events are, even though they're grueling for me, skate for 15 hours a day through 57-degree heat sometimes, it's they're like a holiday for me as well. That's my time. That's my time to work out everything that's going on in a process and to really test and improve, different tools that I've learned along the way, like throughout my whole life. And again, what I did during the paddle. And, it's a combination of so many different things. There's no one particular thing. Like I touched on before, the EMDR therapy, I was able to work out what that actually is. And I didn't know, before going into the paddle, I hadn't really heard of EMDR therapy. And, it wasn't until I spoke to my friend who's a psychologist and he explained what it was. So I researched and went, okay, but they're not really, from all my research, they hadn't really explained it just in a simple term, like I was saying before, just like people watching, that's essentially, that's what you're doing. Or when you look out to the ocean and it feels calming, and the stormier the ocean, the calmer you feel because there's more activity that's going on out there for us to compute, So there was things like that. And then also, as I mentioned before, just working towards those goals, those little milestones where for me it was like working headland to headland. And when times got tough, it was hard on my body and I was going slow, I would bring that back to look at a tree that's up ahead on the beach or a rock or whatever it is. And sometimes thinking I wasn't going anywhere because I was also paddling against the natural current. But being able to look at something and going, okay, well, I've just passed that. So even though it feels like I'm going nowhere, I'm still moving forward, and then really just to be able to break that down to even more to, our basic foundations of every single person's individual life is, the connection to your breath, connection to yourself, and connection knowing that we keep moving forward. Now, whether you believe in a clock or anything, some people don't believe in clocks or all that, but, so long as the sun rises and sun sets, time keeps moving forward, and we keep growing, we keep moving. Even if you're sitting there, things keep moving forward around you and they don't go backwards. Nothing goes back and nothing's stationary. So that's what we need to do. If we can't breathe, then obviously we die. We don't have connection with ourselves or we can't do anything. So some people might say, what's the most important things in your life? They might say family, love, relationships, work, money, blah, blah, blah. But unless you've got your breath, your connection with yourself and moving forward, you're not getting any of that. You don't have any of that. So it's a place that I suggest to people that they can go back to, that's their bare foundations. If they need to dial it back and start again to go, right, I've got to press the reset button. I've got my breath. I've got myself. All right, let's take these steps and start moving forward. Because otherwise, like for me, even though like I'd drop backwards and I'd go in dark holes and everything, which sent me all the way back, I wasn't going all the way back. I was only going halfway back, so things were still, the whole foundations were still wobbly for me underneath. So I was never going to get better. It's just like, the building blocks of high rise or something, if the foundations aren't good, you don't just bring it back down to the 10th floor and build it up and thinking it's going to be good. You've got to come back all the way down to the foundations, make sure they're strong, and then you build up for yourself, So it gives people that starting point. It just simplifies life as well, like of where they need to actually go back to, take that breath and start moving again.
What's the relationship between the extreme physical exertion and then processing the trauma? Why do you push yourself to such an extent, or what do you get out of that when you're so exhausted and you're not sure if you're going to be able to complete whatever the challenge is? What is the direct impact that has on you and processing your trauma and everything on the emotional side of things?
I purposely put myself in physical, mental, and emotional stress and trauma to work out how I keep going in a calm and focused way to get the job done no matter what. Now, all of my events I don't do races. I don't want to be the first. I don't want trophies. I don't want anything like that. All my events, they're for a completely different purpose. And to be able to push myself that far really shows me and other people who live vicariously through my challenges of what's possible in life. That's what it's all about now. Like, I don't need to do any more ultra endurance events. Whether I do or not, I don't know, but I'll never do like another 56-day skate across the US for the same reason, or paddle to Bondi for that same reason, because I don't need to. You know, I've worked out what I needed to out of there, and as I said, they all had a purpose far beyond, you know, just like a world record or the world first, you know, far beyond that. You know, that doesn't even come into play with it. You know, I only do things that no one's done before, because if no one's done it before, then I don't even know it's possible. So there's a challenge even before I get started, and I've got myself to work out how I do that physically, mentally, and emotionally to be able to do what no one's done before. Now, I don't think anything's impossible. Impossible just means that no one's worked out how to do it yet.
Yeah.
So work it out.
And it's really seems like it's the principle of it that excites you and motivates you to prove that to people, that actually it's just your mindset and the way that you perceive things that's going to make all the difference to whether you can or you can't. Like the Henry Ford quote, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. That seems to be sort of what you live your life by. So every time that you complete a challenge like this, or you push yourself to some new extreme and you prove that the impossible is actually possible, how does that make you view your past and the traumas that you went through? Like, does it make you feel like you have more control over that, or like you're a different kind of person? Or do you think about that at all? Is it about trying to prove that even though all that stuff happened to you, that you're still this incredibly strong human being who can survive anything, and about just proving that to yourself again and again and again? Or you don't think of it like that?
No, I don't really think of it like that anymore. It's just, you know, I've got zero negative emotional attachment to my past now. You know, like I don't have any PTSD from my past at all. I don't think of it in any sort of negative way. It's not like I block it out at all. You know, it's still there. It's just non-existent in my life. I'm a different person. I'm proud of who I am, and you know, I do what I want to do. You know, I live where I want to live, and you know, I set myself challenges. And it's not to say that life's super easy for me now. You know, of course, I have my hard daily challenges that I need to do, as we all do, especially in the last couple of years. You know, there's been a lot of new challenges faced with people. So, you know, and I've, of course, faced those, but, you know, my goal's strong going forward. You know, I have an infinite goal that I'll never reach, but at the same time, I attain every single day. So, you know, I think that I'm going to live another 100 years, but I'll also live each day like it's my last.
Yeah. Well, all that salt water, mate, you might. So, how did you get to that point? Because so many people who've gone through any sort of trauma or who want to change their lives, they feel like that rest of their life's going to be dictated by their past. So what's been key to getting you to the point where you now don't really think about that, or you're separate from that? Was it due to these extreme physical challenges that you've managed to overcome, or how did you get to this place that you're in now, which is obviously such a good place after you've been at the absolute bottom in your life?
Yeah, it's definitely through my challenges. You know, as I said, I went down all the professional paths and that, and they did nothing for me at all. You know, that they put me in the worst position. You know, so I took it upon myself. But I'm not saying to everyone you should go and paddle for 17 days in the ocean. You know, like I was pretty lucky to make it and not get eaten alive.
Yeah,
you know?
Sounds
so
like it.
Anyone on here, go and paddle in the ocean for 17 days by yourself, or skateboard across the country. If you want to skateboard across the country, let me know.
It's a bit of a big ask, man. You've got to realise that most people probably aren't cut out for that.
Well, I don't know. That's the thing. They just seem normal to me. You know, like jumping off a hot air balloon just seems normal to me now. You know what I mean? The standard of what is normal the bar got pushed up pretty high on that paddle.
Pretty high. What do you say to people who aren't like that? Like they're not going to go and do something to that extent. Can you offer any advice to people in that situation?
Yeah, of course. It's about testing and challenging yourself, because every time you do test and challenge yourself and process it, you know, we become stronger and become proud of who we are, and we get excited of who we are and what we can actually do. You know, there's a lot of people that may support us, around us, or give us advice, but ultimately it's us that's getting ourselves up every single morning to get through each day, to go through the challenges that we face. Now, we all face tests and challenges in the day, you know, whether it's, you know, should we have a double shot or a triple shot latte today? Or should we go down the road? Or what car should we buy? Or should I stay in this job? Or should I get a new job? Should I go and talk to that girl, or should I not talk to the girl? You know, there's all these tests and challenges that we do where we just don't process them. So I just encourage people to test and challenge yourself, and just to take the negativity out of it. You know, if someone says, oh, this is the hottest chili in the world, I bet you won't have it. And instantly you're going to go, nah. But if you say no, just change it to yeah, and have a bite, you know, and then you're going to burn your mouth and it's going to be sore the next morning for sure. But, you know, you're going to live through it, you know, and then you go, oh, that wasn't that bad. Because what most people do is just overthink what's ahead, you know, and then once they actually do whatever the task is, they go, oh, that's actually wasn't that bad.
Yeah,
you
like
know,
the thinking about it is always worse than the actual reality.
Exactly. You know, so the more that you test and challenge yourself and have fun with it, like, you know, turn things to a yes, let's say, then the more you work out who you are and what you're capable of. But another thing as well that, you know, they definitely should do in school is allow people to explore their emotions. You know, we get so limited on social media of what our emotions should be, you know. You should be happy all the time. If you're not happy, you're depressed. If you're depressed, you should commit suicide. So it kind of doesn't give us many options, you know, and people stop exploring because they think they've got to be happy, or they think they've got to show people that they're happy all the time, even if they're not.
Also, just to add to that, is our understanding of happiness, I don't think is very well developed. And a lot of people, if you ask them, what do you want out of life? They say, I want to be happy. And you say, what does that mean? And they won't actually have a very good answer to that. Or they'll think that happiness is the euphoria of a beautiful summer's day with all my mates around. It's like, well, that's not achievable. No one can live a life where they feel those real strong feelings of happiness every single day. And what we really want is fulfillment and connection and purpose, and feeling like we have value and our life means something, not necessarily like we're on cloud nine all the time. And I don't think that we have a very good understanding of that as individuals and as a society, of what happiness actually is and what it means. And then it's like, if we don't know what to aim for, how are we possibly going to get it?
Yeah, man, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with that one. It's just, yeah, I mean, you've got to work out what that purpose is, you know, and the purpose has got to be above yourself, you know. There's a higher purpose to everything, you know, and I'm not like a spiritual or religious sort of person or anything, but, you know, there's a bigger picture to everything out there, and, you know, we're just one tiny speck of sand on a whole beach, you know. We're pretty insignificant, but we can make a change if we're a conscious community collective together, you know, and you're of service to other people to be able to help the greater good, you know, for everyone, no matter what that looks like, you know. You can't help everyone, but you can definitely put yourself into a position where things are of purpose. And, you know, I learned that long ago with my events. As I said, you know, they're all purposeful of why I do it. You know, it's not to get National Geographic films or write books or anything like that. You know, they kind of come with hard work afterwards. You know, that doesn't just come, you know. But again, you know, the purpose of it isn't to be on TV. It's because, you know, I do a film for National Geographic and it goes to 20 million people across the globe, you know. So that's the way I look at it. Like, I'm not heavily into social media, as I probably should be, but, you know, I don't look at spending all my time and effort to reach, you know, 5,000, 10,000 people. You know, I put all my efforts into reaching millions of people and helping millions of people, you know. So it's kind of just a little bit different purpose, you know. I don't think of the now, I think of, you know, the bigger picture going forward. So, you know, I encourage people to do that, but definitely testing and challenging yourself is a major part of that.
But you reach millions of people now with this message, which becomes your purpose of how many other people can I touch with this to make them reframe the way they view themselves and hopefully go and change their own lives to become something better. But that all started with you, and what you've really earned and what I think you've become addicted to in the healthiest possible way is your own self-worth and wanting to develop that. And that's what you really get out of these challenges. Doesn't matter what it is. Anytime you challenge yourself, you don't know what the outcome's going to be, but you persist and persevere and get the goal anyway, it increases your self-worth, and it reiterates to yourself that you have value and there's a reason for you to be here. And I think that's what makes us want to live and want to do more and want to contribute, and then ultimately want to help others to realize that within themselves, because that's the most powerfully human thing about us.
Yeah, definitely. You know, to be able to share those experiences with other people. And as I said, you know, there's so many people that live vicariously through my challenges now. And, you know, I've done a fair few challenges now over the last 8 years. And
just rattle off some of the other ones that you've done, just so people understand.
So, yeah, I did the 800-kilometre paddle, and then I paddled around Phuket Island on a stand-up paddleboard as well, and then skateboarded from Chicago to Santa Monica along Route 66. I pushed a car with the Gold Coast community for 25 kilometres, a 3-ton pickup truck down the highway. I've ran a marathon carrying a mattress, like a whole marathon, 42.2 kilometres, carrying a mattress with the message, never lay down, never give up. The Melbourne Marathon with a camera rig on me, battery pack, which weighed about 12 kilos, and a camera in front of me. So I live streamed the whole thing. I mean, running along with my bobblehead, sort of bouncing around.
How's your back after that, man? Your chiropractor must get a workout.
Yeah, it's definitely, you know, the hardest part is that you can't really train for these events because I'm a midfoot striker when I hit the ground like running, but because there's so much weight, I have to flat foot, so it's completely different running style, like along there. So it definitely like takes its toll on me for sure. And then I did like the balloon jump, and that was incredible. You know, there was a lot that was going on the ground beforehand. You know, there was camera crews and people like who were there, and they were supposed to help with like the safety aspects of like the ropes of this little runway that I had to go across to get off the balloon. And, you know, but they were just so in awe. There was a person standing on top of the balloon while the sun's rising, sort of thing. So it was kind of like chaotic. And then the balloon had just taken off, and I just realised, we're about 500 foot off the ground and it doesn't look real safe, but I'm not going to tell them to put the balloon down. I've just got to deal with it and do my best up here. But at the same time, you know, the sun started to come up, and just sat in that moment, just so grateful and just so in that moment. Just thought, you know, I'm the only person in the world to ever experience this, as far as I know.
Yeah.
You know, such a pure moment for myself.
What did you think about at that time? Did you think about anything, or did you just take it in?
I just took it in. Yeah, everything just completely stopped around me. You know, any thoughts of, you know, is this safe enough for me to jump off, you know, in 20 minutes?
Definitely not.
You know, a couple of key moments sort of flashed in my head, what I'd gone through and come through, and you know, how I'd really pushed to be able to really work towards being there, because on that day, that's the day that I wanted to be on top of a balloon. You know, I made it happen. It didn't just happen for me. Nothing just fell in my lap. You know, there was a lot of work over the last 8 years to be able to get myself into that position to experience something that no one in the world's ever experienced. You know, it's incredible. And it's something so simple as sitting on top of a hot air balloon, you know, and the flames burning my butt underneath, but, you know, watching that sun rise just over the fields in Tennessee. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible moment. Right. And then it changed again, because it's like, all right, we're up high enough. You've got to jump. You know, the balloon's overheating. We've got to go down, or it's going to catch fire. So it's like, all right, time to go. You know. So then it changed to running off the balloon.
And what was it like jumping off that thing?
It was incredible. I mean, it was crazy as well. Because I'm standing up there, I had to cat crawl across the first part because the parachute top's all loose, so I would have fallen down into the flames. So I had to just kind of cat crawl across the load tapes. But once I got onto the actual envelope of the balloon, it was kind of like a jumping castle, a little bouncing castle. So I was like, oh, that's pretty fun. So I stood up on the edge there, and I had a biplane that was coming around as well with a guy with a camera in it. And it was coming around, so I'm like, right, I've got to go now. So I just started running, and I didn't know how I was going to come off. You know, I thought I would just slide off the thing or tumble off, or it was going to collapse and flip me off, or had no idea. And I just started running, and I was thinking, shouldn't I be off the balloon now? Like, what's going on? And I ran down so far, I could see the people underneath, like in the basket. And I went, that's not right, I've got to jump. So I just jumped off this balloon, and you have to look at the photos. It's like I'm running vertically like 3 stories down this balloon. I've got no idea how I was still on the balloon.
All right.
Because I couldn't see the land, I couldn't see the ground underneath me, because all I had was this big balloon underneath me. So the land just revealed itself. It's just like weightlessness just dropping out of the sky until it caught me after about 5 or 6 seconds, and the wind caught me, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And then, pulled the chute, and then I looked down to see where I was going to land.
Man, I love the way you talk about it. Like, it was just like, it was all good and it was good fun. Like, because I'm just, even hearing you describe it is giving me that feeling in the stomach, like when you get on the roller coaster and you're just like, oh, like I can feel that just hearing you describe it like that. Just absolutely insane thing to do. That moment sitting up there, I can imagine you thinking like, how the hell did I get here from being someone who tried so hard to essentially not be here anymore to sitting on top of a hot air balloon after all these other challenges that you've done. And it just goes to show what is possible and how far you can come from being at the absolute bottom to just doing things that are completely mind-blowing. And it must be such a trip to know that you're that same person who was in both situations, and the key element in it all was you, and you flipping that switch in your mind and you saying, well, if I've got nothing to lose, I might as well go for it rather than I might as well end it. And then looking at the result of what happened, it's just completely nuts, man.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, like I'm always forward moving, but, every now and then I, pinch myself and just think, wow, as we were saying before, I could have gone one way or the other, and just lucky that I went this way, and, doing things like jumping off the balloon and just having messages from, people I grew up with and haven't, connected with since I was like 9 or 12 years old when I lived in Adelaide, to have messages from them, and then now understanding why I was the way I was as a kid, and what I'm doing now, I read the cheers and the tears that come through with it, and it makes me excited to keep on doing these things, knowing that, they probably have more of an impact on more people in the world than I realise, and I want people to get what they can out of it. It's just look at my events like a song. People interpret songs in their own way that's beneficial to them, and it might be different to the artist, but that's how I look at my events. People seem to get what they want out of my events and watching them vicariously, whether it's them doing their own challenges or them taking excuses out of their lives for just getting started again, and the main reason is just giving them hope, we have that hope, like I did. We have that hope taken away, and looking back, no one's got that right to take any hope away from anyone else and say that something's impossible or it can't be done. It's up to that person to go out and do it. We're all built differently, and there's some things that, as I said, me jumping off a hot air balloon's normal to me, but apart from the balloon pilot, everyone else that was sort of involved with the festival was saying it's impossible, you can't do it, blah, 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 Like with all of my events, everyone tells me it's impossible and they try and talk me out of it. I'm like,
you love that.
I'll be...
You love it when they say that.
Yeah. You know what I say? How do you know? When did you last try?
Well, no one has.
Oh, no, but I'm like, I'll be right.
I hope you're making bets on these, because you always prove them wrong.
Yeah. Of course. Well, I just work it out, like they're calculated risks, like because I'd never skydived before I did the hot air balloon jump as well. So, I had to learn to skydive for it. So I worked backwards, I thought of the message and I was like, right, what message do I want to share with people? And it's just like, all right, it's time to reach new heights. I'm like, how am I going to reach new heights? All right, I'm going to stand on top of a hot air balloon and jump off. All right, to be able to do that, what do I need to do? All right, I better learn to skydive first.
Yeah, and obviously people don't need to go to that extreme, but what you're saying is if you've got an idea, if you think of something that means enough to you, set it as a goal and believe that you can actually do that, and then put the steps in place to make that practical and make it happen, and understand that you have the power within you to actually do those things, and no one can take that hope or that faith or that effort from you. That's ultimately all down to you, and that's the beauty of it. So do you feel like you've got anything else left to prove now?
I mean, I've got nothing to prove at all, it's and all of it was about, proving to myself and obviously testing and that. I've written a couple of books and I've put out like a course website, which I'm super proud of. I say that's my legacy. It's got all the elements in it, to all of the events that I've done, of what I've learned along the way. And, I've evolved what breathwork, meditation and yoga I think should be, to be more results driven and just evolve for what we've got going on in today's day and age, to be able to use and utilize, those tools in not just how they're commercially marketed, but really help with trauma and really help to do what the marketing says it does. I just don't think that they do at the moment. So I evolved those, and that's out of like been teaching, like training people and myself for the last 30 years of my life, so, there's a lot of work that's gone into them. There's films out on National Geographic, which again, I'm super proud of, especially the first one, which is about the paddle. It's called Heart of the Sea. My brother's spoken out in it as well. And, him and I have a better relationship now because of making the film than we ever did growing up, and had I not made the film, probably would have never have known like how proud he is of me, and he would never have known how much I admire him also. So, there's been some super special moments in my life for that, but I've really got nothing to prove to anyone. I just like keep just doing cool shit, like just come up with something and go, hey, I'm just going to do this. Like, why not? And then, it's always got a message to it. But again, it's just about doing cool shit in life and, just keep living my life, man. As I said, I'm here for another 100 years. So I just keep busy living.
So what do you say to people who think that they're never going to be anything, or that they're not cut out for it, or fate hasn't smiled on them and it's just the way it is and they're never going to achieve anything extraordinary? What's your advice to people with that attitude?
First thing is stop listening to other people and do the hard work. Nothing comes easy, but, have your goal going forward and have your purpose that's bigger than the challenge itself, and just always keep working towards it. People want things instantaneously, but the good things, they're not instant, Sometimes they take time. Sometimes you work at it and you've just got to put it aside just for a little bit and you work on another project. But just make sure all the projects that you do all marry up together, So you're working towards your main goal that's ahead, and you have just little job tasks that you do along the way. So don't look at, I need to get a car as one job and then hit that milestone and then it's a dead end, or I need to get another job, or I need to get a house, or I need to get a girlfriend, or whatever it might be. Don't look at them as dead ends. Have it so everything flows in together and it all makes sense for where you're going on that bigger picture of your own life, and that, like I said, that infinite goal. So for me, it's simple, the infinite goal is change the world. Now what does that actually look like? And it's an infinite thing, but I'm probably doing it parts every day, just through even the challenges that I've set and speaking with you on podcasts and everything. We're changing people's lives every single day from it. But for me, that's my endless goal, you know. So I get up in the morning and that's what I work towards. And everything I do, does it make sense towards that? Cool. Can I justify it? Yeah, cool. I justify that, my time and energy into it and my money into it. Yeah, cool. And, you know, this is the reward out of it, you know. And it's never a financial reward or I do anything. I just, you know, how's it going to be suit my purpose for helping change the world and just doing my part, you know. And I pick my missions as well, you know, like mine's about trauma and child abuse and overcoming and showing people what's possible. You know, I don't pick fights with everything that's negative that's going on in the world, and I don't have a voice with everything. You know, I don't want to confuse people of, you know, what my purpose is and what I'm doing. You know, like I stay on track and I stay on my path, and, you know, so long as people have good intentions, morals and purpose, then you can't be wrong, you know.
Yeah, well, there's absolutely no doubt that you are changing the world, mate. It's unbelievable what you've done. And yeah, here's to the next 100 years, eh?
Exactly. Thanks to you, man. And, you know, you're doing incredible work, and, you know, you're dedicated to your podcast and everything as well, which is, you know, it's a hard thing to do. It's consistency as well, you know, so you obviously know all about that, and, you know, and you're making a big impact on everyone's lives as well, and allowing, you know, a beautiful platform for people to be able to share their experiences as well, for other people to get whatever they want out of it.
That's it for this episode. If you're getting some value out of the show, please help us out with a quick rate and review on Apple Podcasts. Everything we do is recorded in video, so follow Youngblood Men's Mental Health on Instagram and Facebook, and Youngblood Mental Health on TikTok. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Youngblood Media, and please leave us a comment or send us a message if these stories resonate. We'd love to hear from you. And most importantly, please share the podcast with anyone in your life who might need it. We're all about reaching as many people as we can. This is Youngblood. Thanks for being part of the mission. Catch you next time.